Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over LTCN and BCHG and the other grayscale trusts and why they got absolutely hammered today on some unexpected market news. So let's get it. So the first thing I want to show you guys before we get into the grayscale trusts here is it's not just the grayscale trust that got hammered. As you guys can see, pretty much all of these are down. But if I scroll to the top here, like we'll go way up here, way up here on the watch list. I mean, just take a look at how much of these actually got smashed. The stocks above the 50-day moving average on the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 went down 27 to 31% in one single day. That's like a flash crash. So this is pretty insane. I have not. I think the last time that I've actually seen this was back in 2022. Does it mean we're in a bear market? No, honestly. I mean, stocks could still go down quite a bit. Crypto could still go down quite a bit, and we still technically would not be in a bear market. But it's an impressive drop. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's a huge drop. This is not small by any means. As you guys can see, the VIX has gone up nearly 16%. All of the indices were down, as you guys see here, between 1 to 2%. You go down the watch list of dividend-paying stocks, ETFs, and swing trade stocks, you can see that nearly every single one of these are red. Just red, all across the board, all the way down. It doesn't matter what it is. Even some, investors' favorites like Palantir and SoFi were also red on the day. Things like Robinhood, C3AI, also red. And crypto itself actually had some pretty gnarly drops too. So Bitcoin is currently down to about 67,000. A lot of the altcoins got smashed pretty hard. I was actually tracking this throughout the day. And some of these alts were down like 15, 20, 25% in a single day, which, again, I've been telling you guys on this channel, there's 3 scenarios that could play out with Bitcoin, okay? So going into the halving, there's usually some kind of dump. So the crypto piece dumping today doesn't really surprise me. Just wasn't expecting it to happen like this, and I'll get to that in a minute. But we basically said before that it can go down and then chop sideways and then go up. That's the bearish case scenario. Bitcoin goes to new all-time highs again by December, or we chop around sideways between 59 to 74K, and then the EMAs move up to the price. That's the neutral scenario, and then Bitcoin goes higher in December. Or best case scenario, we just, keep going up. There's an accelerated cycle, and let's say the altcoins pop off by the end of the year, and then by the end of this year, start of next year, something like that, the bull run is over. But I think the likeliest scenario is that Bitcoin's going to have a retracement and or chop sideways to the end of the year, because I don't expect the cycles to change, even though it looks like they're going to. So as you guys can see, like a lot of these altcoins have really gotten dumped on. So Litecoin at $85, Bitcoin Cash took quite a hit too. Some other ones that we actually have, like Filecoin dropped to like nearly $2 a token. So that's a pretty big, fat, nasty dump. Renders down to $8, as you guys can see. AIOZ 67 cents. Engine 35 cents. I mean, the list goes on. So a lot of nasty drops today. Going over to the portfolio here, as you guys can see, we actually took a massive hit today too. So down 15, almost 16% on LTCN. Down 5% on BCHG, and obviously negative on these two. I think we're going to pick up some more Bitcoin miners next week, but if the prices are still low on HZEN and ETCG, we're definitely going to pick up some more of this for sure. But the reason I say this is because, we have a certain margin amount that we like to keep as a cushion so we don't get a margin call. That's at about 50%. So we like to try to keep it above 50%, but today it dropped below 50% because of the massive drop in the markets. And we just want to make sure we're not going to get put in a situation where we have to get a margin call. So we've never had one, and we don't want to get one either. But as you guys can see here, it pretty much does red almost nearly all across the board, especially on the miners. Miners really got smashed pretty hard today too. So what's going on with the markets? Well, I'm not gonna get into this too much, but I'll leave it in the description for you guys down below. Basically, there is a conflict going on right now between Iran and Israel, and there is a risk, keyword risk, that Iran might try to do something to Israel supposedly this weekend. So, and then you have the start of earnings, and markets are kind of freaking out a little bit because they don't know if inflation is actually transitory or not. They think if it keeps going up, the Fed might have to raise rates or push out rate cuts to a further date. So a culmination of those things is kind of causing markets to get a little bit wobbly, so to speak. But this, you guys can look at this in your own time. I'll leave it in the description down below if you guys are interested to see it, because I don't want to drag on this piece of it too much, but let's get into the content here. So as you guys can see, LTCN has had a pretty large drop. Interestingly enough, I didn't think we were actually going to get back to the support zone, but it looks like we might. So the support zone on LTCN is between $23 to $27. As you guys can see here, the wick high is back here, up here at $54. So going over to the daily, we have had a death cross on the MACD and the RSI. If we scroll back here a little bit in time, you guys can see the last time we had that was actually back here, but it was a fake out, and then it had another golden cross. The last time that we had a meaningful death cross was back here, January 2021. We did have a pretty sizable drop. So LTCN from basically from the swing high there went down roughly, I want to say roughly about 50, maybe 60%. So pretty nasty looking drop. So I guess the real question is, how far down are we at this point compared to that previous drop? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So far, from wick to wick, we're down about 42%. From wick to the current market close, as of today, which is the end of the market week, about 41%. So where would we be if we dropped about 50 to 60%? We would be, not surprisingly, roughly about in this support zone. So it does seem likely that it's going to come back down here. We have no intention of selling our shares, but it depends. So we would much rather sell them at $500 than the current price, or especially on a red day. One of our rules that we try to always maintain is never to sell for a profit on a red day. We always try to sell for a profit when there's strength in the market. So sell into strength and take profits when the markets are going up like this. So we'll go ahead and do the measured move here. So from the support zone, assuming it gets back in there and you want to get in because you think it's a good time to buy, just to get back up to that wick high there is 113%. And of course, reiterate one more time that the resistance overhead is between $100 to $135. So another thing I wanted to point out was, once again, this control bar. I did tell you guys before that it was probably going to have some trouble getting above this. It turned out that I was actually more correct than I thought I was going to be. So, I would have been happy to be wrong. If this thing had just kept skyrocketing straight up to the moon, I would have had no complaints at all. Like I said before, we'd rather be rich than right. But turns out that was actually a good call. So anyways, if we take the measured move from, assuming it gets back to the support zone, all the way up to this resistance, you'd be looking at about 275% to 405%. Now, if you don't want to sell in between these, or buy these supports, sell at resistance, you just want to hold for the bull run top, that's fine too. We cover a lot of that content when we talk about altcoins and Bitcoin during our Bitcoin videos, so you guys can check that out, and we'll keep you up to date with that stuff. So anyways, BCHG, it is actually now in the support zone. We're no longer talking about being in the support zone. This is actually in the support zone. So from the from the top of the wick to the bottom of the wick, this thing dropped basically 47% in 1 week, and to the market close, you're talking about 42%. So the RSI is retracing, and this support likely is going to end up holding. I say this because, again, it did hold back here during the bull run in the previous cycle. Of course, it never came back up and tested as resistance, but that's fine. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to do that. Just in case it does go lower, the support below that is going to be between $7 to $8, just so you all know, or $7 to $7.60. So the current support zone is $10.25 to $12.60. The current resistance is $18 to basically $20, and then of course the wick high is roughly about $24 or so. So already from where we were not even a week and a half ago to right now, we're down roughly about 53% in total. I guess a more accurate description here would be roughly about 48.5%. So, I mean, it's a golden buying opportunity. Whether you guys choose to buy or not is up to you. Again, we already have our bags filled for BCHG unless it comes back down to $4. We don't, or, I'd be willing to say that we probably would buy maybe as high as $6. If it gets to $6, we'll definitely buy some more, but anything above that, probably going to be hands off for us at this point. So, but we already have our positions, so we got them like way down here somewhere. But again, if this thing goes from $12 all the way up here to the all-time highs at 60, or even up to the Fibonacci retracement top level at $250, I mean, it's up to you whether you think it's worth the risk or not. But I will say this, $250 is a lot further away than the market low, which is like 50 or 60 cents. Again, either way, it's a risk. You could just start DCAing in now if you think it's going to go lower. But that, again, is entirely up to you. So anyways, the measured move from, let's just say you got it now from the current price all the way to the top here is going to be about 95%. So HZEN, we did want to start getting in on this one, but we kind of wanted to wait for it to get a little bit lower and closer to this support zone here. So it's really low in price when we buy it. And we think at this point it's likely to do that because this is a pretty fat red candle. So the bull pennant pattern did not play out, unfortunately. So we'll just have to go with what we got now. This clearly has basically not held as support. It's turned into resistance. So as of right now, support is going to be roughly about $3.80 to $4.20, and resistance is going to be $6.90 to $8. So kind of our plan is to buy the miners next week because they, in my opinion, they actually probably got hit harder than the grayscale trusts. And, Bitcoin is going to be the first thing to run when it does in the bull run, and then Ethereum will run, and then all the altcoins will run. So if GBTC still existed, it would run up before any of these grayscale trusts. So that's kind of how we're thinking about that. And it would give us another week or so to let the price of HZEN come down. So anyways, you got your zones here from the buy zone to the sell zone. You'd be looking at about 77.5% to 107%, and then back up to that wick high up there, about 167%. So ETCG, this one's kind of stuck in no man's land. It clearly does not want to break this level up here. So this is still resistance. This is still support. So once again, you have all this confluence here. You have the trend line, the channel, the EMAs, and the support zone kind of holding up the price. So that's going to be between $13 to about $16, and the resistance is $17.60 to about $20. So if you chose to get in now, you'd be looking at about 15 to 31%. And again, if you don't want to sell in between these zones, that's entirely up to you. But if you wanted to wait to get to the bottom of the zone, and let's say you got it near that trend line, you'd be looking at about 35 to 54% on that move. So GXLM, this one was clearly also a fake out. It did not hold its support. Unfortunately, that kind of sucks, but is what it is. So actually, let's see if I can get these lines out real quick. So this former rising wedge could actually hold as kind of a support zone. You see that the EMAs are also there too. So as of right now, I would say that support is probably going to be somewhere between this red EMA at $31 to I would say it's probably fair to say anywhere between the red to the yellow EMA. So about 30 to $50 is roughly going to be about the support. So let's say you get in at the blue EMA at 40 to get to the current resistance, 32 to about 48% on that move. And I now have to change this back into resistance. So ETH still within this handle pattern. That's the cup and handle. So clearly this did actually hold as resistance. So current support is going to be 17.25 to 18. And current resistance, which is pretty much where we're at now, is 25.10 to about 79.10 or so. So if you wanted to wait to get in, let's say maybe start at the top of these candles, so $20, and then just kind of DCA into the support, that's an option. So we'll say you get your average at like $19. You'd be looking at about 29 to 50%, and then all the way to the top there, roughly about 84%. So Zcash, again, this is another one we're looking at buying, but we want to wait to see it get back into the zone, which it's looking likely at this point it is going to do because we have a red candle, then we have a lower red candle. That indicates a continuation of a bear trend, or at least a short-term bear trend. I'm thinking it's likely going to come back into the support. So that's between $4.40 to about $5, and resistance is $7.30-ish to about $8. So if you waited to get into that zone, you'd be looking at about 57 to 73%, and then all the way up to the top of that wick there, about 120%. So, okay, GSOL finally made its move. It does look like it wants to break bearish out of this coiling pattern, so it's likely going to come back down somewhere between, I'd say probably 175 and maybe as high as between this wick and this wick here, so about 275. I know that's a pretty wide range. If it was me, I would wait for it to get to the zone to even buy it. As you guys can see, it clearly came back to the zone before, so it is possible. We'll just maybe say you get your average at 225 or something. So the move on that would be roughly about 158%. That's still a good move. Again, mana, this is dropping. It did confirm bearish out of the triangle, which sucks, but is what it is. So at the high point, this thing could stop at $27. At the low point, somewhere between $17.50 to $20.50. And then, of course, the wick high is all the way up here at 69-ish, about $70. So let's just assume you get it somewhere in between the top of this wick and the top of the support. We'll say like, I don't know, $25 or something like that. So to get back to the top of that wick would be about 177% move. So GBAT, I actually need to redo these lines a little bit because they're not entirely accurate. So there we go. And there we go. Okay, so now it does, with this being restructured, it does appear that we did have a breakdown on this. So once again, as I said before, if I was going to get into this, I'd start getting in around $10 or so, which is the top of these candles here, or maybe even the bottom of this red wick. It's about $12, so 10 to 12 bucks, somewhere in there. So if you got in that area, you'd be looking at about 214%. And again, the price is moving down towards that direction, so it's possible we may get a second chance to buy the dip on this. Again, G-Link has turned bearish. I suspect it's probably going to stop somewhere between $68 to about $85 or so. If you manage to get in that zone, ride it all the way to the top here, which is roughly about 222 bucks. You get a 202% gain. So PhilG, even though this one did sell off, it kind of looks like it didn't really do much of anything. So yeah, that's pretty odd considering the rest of all of these dumped off a lot. But if I was going to buy this, I would probably start buying like maybe somewhere around $63. It's not that I'm bearish on this. It's just that, I mean, generally speaking, when crypto dumps, it usually dumps a lot more than people think it's going to. So it's best to be just a little bit more conservative just in case. Instead of like if I bought up here at 119 and then it drops to 64 or 60, that's a 50% cut on my money right there. So it's something to think about. But if you got at the top of these candles, which would make perfect sense, because that is where the breakout point was for this move. I actually need to redo this. So the move would be pretty large. It would be about 460%. And again, there's no guarantees it could come back down there, but that is kind of where the bottom of the EMAs are and also the top of those candle bodies. So GLIV, this thing is still coiling. As you guys can see, there's no confirmed breakout yet, but we do have a lower candle close here than this candle. So that's pretty bearish, I would say. Again, if I was going to buy this, I'd buy somewhere between the bottom of these wicks and the tops of these candles. I think that would be the first stopping point. The second stopping point would be this support here. So that's roughly about 1230 to 1460. And then you have about 26 to 28 ish or so dollars on that one. So we'll do the measurement here. To get all the way back to the top to where it was before, it'd be about a 202% move on this. So some pretty juicy discounts that the market presented today. Whether you guys choose to pick them up or not, that's up to you. We are going to start buying quite a bit more heavily because, again, the halving for Bitcoin is taking place next week. And as we told you guys before, and it's pretty much the consensus in the crypto space right now, that the Bitcoin bull run is not over because it's never been over before the halving. So, and we also have not seen a major alt season, so that's still something to consider as well. And we always see one of those before the end of the bull run. So, anyways, hope y'all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.